Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the Hifiman Susvara. And I know it's been a long time since I did my first impressions, and I apologize for that. And sorry I had to take a couple of weeks off from doing reviews. I had some family issues I had to take care of. And I just want to remind you all that as great of a hobby as this is, always put your family first. Family is what's most important, and your hobbies have to come second. So, anyway, this headphone was loaned to me by Hifiman for review, and I did want to mention that if you've watched my channel, been watching it for the last how long, 5-6 years now, I've reviewed a lot of Hifiman equipment, and Hifiman is loaned equipment to me for reviews, and I just wanted to let y'all know that they do not try to influence my reviews at all. They have never asked to see a review before it was published. They've never influenced my reviews in any way whatsoever. They let me do what I want, and most of the headphones I have recommended because I like them, but there's been a few Hifiman headphones that I was not crazy about, and they had no problems with me giving less than favorable reviews. One would be the HE9, I think it is, that closed back headphone they did a couple of years ago. Just did not like that headphone at all. And then I think it's called the Autovina, the $2,000 closed back version of the HE1000. Decent headphone, but not crazy about it. And it has its good points, it has its bad points, but Hifiman's been okay with that. So if I tell you I really like a headphone, I'm telling you the truth. And I can tell you right now, I really do like this headphone. And it does sell for $6,000. It's still $6,000, even though the newer version of the Susvara has come out recently. That would be the Susvara Unveiled, which basically doesn't have grills on it. It has covers that keep the dust out that you take off when you listen to it, but then have to put them back on. And I haven't heard that yet. I haven't even seen one, and so I can't tell you how that compares to this. But I can tell you that I've spent a lot of time listening to this headphone. I mean, probably a couple hundred hours, and I've tried this with a lot of different amp DAC combinations, and I'm actually going to go through that in this review. So I can tell you right now, this is probably going to be a long video, but this is a $6,000 headphone, the most expensive headphone or even the most expensive piece of equipment that I've reviewed up to this point. And I feel it deserves, some effort into my review, not only putting the time in to listen to it, but trying it with different amps and DACs. And I can tell you right now, this is very sensitive to the equipment that it's attached to. So, I want to be thorough with this. I'd imagine anyone that's considering spending $6,000 on a headphone wants as much information as they can possibly get before they invest that kind of money. So I'm going to try to tell you everything I know about this headphone in this video. So if this video goes 40 minutes, that's probably what's going to happen, and I apologize if it's too long, but I will put timestamps underneath the video, so if you don't want to watch it all, you can skip around and watch the parts you want. So I'll get at it. This is a wired, full-size, over-the-ear, open-back, planar magnetic headphone, and it does use stealth magnets, and as far as I know, the Susvara was the first Hifiman headphone to use stealth magnets. And if you don't know what those are, the very short version of it is a planar magnetic headphone has magnets that run across the diaphragm, usually on both sides, And the stealth magnets, if you look at them from the end, are rounded on the outside edge instead of square. And the idea is that the rounded magnets let the sound pass over them smoother with less distortion caused by the edges of the magnets. And it's supposed to give you a cleaner, less distorted sound. So, going into the specifications of this headphone has an impedance of 60 ohms, which is very high for a planar magnetic headphone. It has a sensitivity of 83 decibels at 1 milliwatt, so this is very hard to drive. In fact, of the probably 35-40 headphones I've reviewed since I've been doing this, this is the hardest headphone to drive that I've ever reviewed. It's even a little bit harder than the Hifiman HE6, which has been, notorious for being hard to drive. And this, I believe, is even a little bit harder because that headphone is 50 ohms and this is 60 ohms, so it's going to require a little more push from your amp. Hifiman claims a weight of 450 grams on this. According to my kitchen scale, it's actually 465, which makes it a little bit on the heavy side of average. It's a little bit heavier than most full-size headphones, but it's not extremely heavy. I mean, I've reviewed headphones that have been over 600 grams, and it's actually very comfortable in my opinion. Let me roll in and give you a closer look at this. As you can see, a big difference between this and the other Hifiman higher-end headphones. In fact, everything from the Edition XS up through the Anandas, through the Arias, through the HE1000 series, they all have the Hifiman egg-shaped headphone cups, which are tall and dip down real low, and this one doesn't. This is a pretty much almost round ear cup, and I actually prefer this because I actually have a little bit of an issue with the egg-shaped ear cups that they ride kind of low on my jaw and can irritate my TMJ a little bit, and I have to take a break every once in a while, where these don't have that, and it's actually, like I said, very comfortable, even though it's a little bit on the heavy side. As you can see, they have an aluminum grill, aluminum frame around it, aluminum yokes, a stainless steel head strap, or a headband. The head strap, it feels like it's actually suede. I'm not sure if it is or not. If it's real suede, if it's an imitation, they did a very good job. It feels like real suede. These have lots of swivel and rotation in every direction, so you're going to get a real good fit. The ear pads, I believe, are a synthetic leather with cloth on the inside. You can see they're tapered. This uses the standard Hifiman 3.5 millimeter plugs, one on each ear cup, and you've got a real wood around the headphone, around the ear cup here, which is just a veneer. The cup itself is actually made of plastic, and I guess that's about it. It is, I believe, a really nice looking headphone, and I've seen pictures of the new Susvara unveiled, and I actually prefer the way this one looks. And I did want to show you what this comes with. It comes with two cables. They're both about 10 feet long, 3 meters to 10 feet, somewhere in there. And they do have a nice cloth covering, and they're nicer than the headphone cables that come with any of the other Hifiman headphones. You've got this one with a 4-pin full-size XLR plug at the amp end, and then you've got the second cable with your standard 6.3 millimeter single-ended plug at your amp end. And then I did want to show you, this actually comes with a hardcover book that tells you all about the Susvara and lots of pictures and all that. Never seen that with any other headphone. And like I said, it is hardcover with a sleeve on it. And then I wanted to also show you the case it comes in. It actually comes in a pretty substantial case with it's going to keep dust and all that off, and it has like a satin sort of liner in it and formed to fit the headphones, and gives you a place to keep your headphones when you're not listening to them. The HE1000 SE actually comes with a similar case. So before I get into the sound, I want to mention what type of music I've listened to with this, and I would say more than anything, acoustic music, natural instruments. Those are my favorite for reviewing headphones, like real string instruments, non-amplified string instruments, everything from guitars to violins to oboes to whatever. And I also really like piano music for reviewing headphones. It takes a good headphone to really make a piano sound realistic. And I've got a nephew that is a concert pianist. I can't say that word, but I don't want to say it wrong. So anyway, so I've actually been to some of his demonstrations where he's, I'm sitting right there listening to a grand piano with someone that really knows how to play it. So I know what a piano should sound like, and that's a real test of a headphone, that it can make a piano sound realistic, especially getting into lower and higher notes. A lot of headphones and speakers just break down trying to reproduce piano music. I've also listened to a variety of rock music, everything from classic rock to, more modern stuff. Some pop, some electronic, and a little bit of orchestral music in the mix. My source reviewing this headphone has been been CDs, and I've used two different CD players, both as transports only. The SMSL PL200 and the Cambridge Audio 540C, and like I said, both of those as transports. And I did want to mention, and it's part of why this video may be pretty long, is I've used pretty much every amp and every DAC I have, and you can see looking around, I've got quite a few, and there's actually a few more out at my desk. And I've actually got a list of 18 headphone amps that I tried this with, and I'm going to go through all 18 and give you a very brief opinion of how well they worked with this headphone, because like I said, this headphone is very dependent on the amp and DAC that you use. It can make a huge difference in the performance. So out of all the amps and DACs I used, I'll tell you what my favorite was. I don't have it right now. I did for quite a while, but had to send it back. I had probably my favorite of any DAC I've ever reviewed, and I've reviewed some pretty decent DACs. Anyway, I had the Hi-Fi Audio IDSD Pro Signature model, which is a $3,250 DAC. Also has a pretty good headphone amp built into it. But as far as using it as a standalone DAC, it's probably the best, my favorite of all the DACs I've reviewed so far. Well, combining that with the Hifiman Golden Wave Prelude headphone amp, which I think it's in your view, you can see sitting right here, which is a $2,500 Class A headphone amp that puts out 10 watts per channel into 32 ohms. Combining the Hi-Fi Audio IDSD Pro Signature with the Hifiman Golden Wave Prelude was my favorite combination of amp DAC that I've used with this headphone. So my opinions, my description of the sound is going to be based mostly on using that with that equipment, with that particular amp and DAC. I had tried a lot of other combinations that worked very well. That just happened to be my favorite. So when I describe my opinion of the sound of this headphone, that is the equipment I was using, because you're going to get a lot different results depending on the equipment you use. And I can tell you right now, if you buy this headphone, spend the $6,000 for this headphone, you don't want to skimp on the equipment. I mean, you can get by for a while on maybe a $500 amp DAC combination, but you are not going to hear this headphone for what it's possible of doing. And I'll admit, even the equipment I have used probably does not take this to its absolute limit. I mean, I've heard of people using $30,000 worth of DACs and amps with this headphone. So this can probably go even further than what I've heard, but I've used some pretty decent equipment, and like I said, I will tell you how each amp did as far as powering and producing the best sound that it could with this headphone. So I'll get started on the sound. I guess the first thing I'm going to mention is the tone balance. And I would consider the tone balance of this headphone to be very close to neutral, but with a slight emphasis in the mid bass, maybe 2 or 3 decibels of extra bump in the mid bass. And then the mid range is just a little bit on the warm side of neutral, which actually makes it very pleasant and makes it a lot more forgiving of less than perfect recordings. Headphones that have a dry, sterile, cool mid-range are very critical of the recording quality. You need excellent recordings where the little bit of warmth in this actually, like I said, makes it very pleasant and easy to listen to and less fatiguing because of that. And like I said, you can actually, this headphone has extreme detail, but you can actually listen to less than perfect recordings with it because of that slight tilt towards warmness in the mid-range. Okay, extension is excellent on both ends. It goes very low into the sub bass, but the sub bass is not emphasized. So if you are a bass head, this is probably not the headphone for you. There are better choices for bass heads. But if you're looking for a pretty neutral, very accurate headphone, then this is the way to go. As far as the other end, the extension into the treble goes higher than I'm sure than I can hear. And I'll be honest with you, at my age, I don't believe I can hear anything above 15,000 hertz anymore. And if you're over 30, you're probably in the same boat. Anyway, the sub bass. The sub bass, like I said, it goes low, but it's not emphasized, but it's deep, it's solid, and it's very well controlled. It never gets muddy, never gets distorted, and it's not a one note sub bass. From song to song, or sometimes even in the same song, you'll hear different levels of sub bass that actually have a different sound, a different texture. Like I said, not a bass head headphone, but very respectable bass. The mid bass is exceptionally clean, exceptionally tight, and well controlled. Like I said, once again, never muddy or bloated or distorted, but once again, only I would say a 2 or 3 decibel bump above being completely flat and neutral. The mid-range, I would say is very balanced. There's no peaks or valleys. There's nothing missing. Everything is there. And it has exceptional clarity in the mid-range. I mean, honestly, beyond anything I've ever heard in any other headphone. The treble is exceptionally clean. It's very sparkly, but never sounds harsh to me, and is never fatiguing to me. I can listen to this headphone for hours. The detail is the best I've ever heard. A few headphones that come close would be the Hifiman 1000 series, or even the Hifiman HE6. Come close in detail, but not quite on the level of this headphone. I can honestly say that I've never heard another headphone that can equal this in detail retrieval. Soundstage. This headphone has a wide soundstage and it has a deep soundstage. It has a lot of depth to it, sounds very three-dimensional, has what I describe as a holographic soundstage to it. Not quite the height of the soundstage of some of the egg-shaped Hifiman headphones that I think have a little bit more height, where you hear things a little lower, a little higher, but this has excellent depth and width, and the only other Hifiman headphone that I believe can compete with this in depth of soundstage is the HE1000 SE. Imaging, this headphone has the most pinpoint, exact imaging that I've heard from any headphone. Separation, and what I'm talking about is the separation of instruments. Do they each have their own location? Do the instruments blur together? Do they blur with the voices? And this headphone, without a doubt, has the best, cleanest separation of instruments and vocals that I've heard from any headphone. Every instrument has its own precise location. Every voice has its own precise location, not only in direction, but in depth. You hear things from close up, you hear things from further away, and even further yet, just a lot of different layers and separation. And like I said, the best imaging and separation I've heard from any headphone that I've heard up to this date. And yeah, there's some high-end headphones that I haven't heard yet, but I have heard quite a few. If you look at my list of reviews, I've heard quite a few, pretty high-end headphones up in the $2,000, $3,000, even $4,000 range. So another thing where this headphone really stands out is what I would call realism. Do things sound real? And I have never heard a headphone that can reproduce acoustic guitars and make them sound as real as this headphone does. I've never heard a headphone that can reproduce piano notes and make them sound as real as this headphone. I've never heard a headphone that can reproduce voices and make them sound as real as this headphone does. That is this headphone's strongest point, the realism that makes you feel like you're right there listening to something live instead of listening to a recording. Okay, dynamics. This headphone is very punchy, very dynamic. It has quite a bit of slam to it, but that is very amp dependent. If this amp does not have enough power into it, not only do you lose that punch and that slam, but you also lose the weight to your bass. Like I said, this headphone, when properly amped, has probably a 2 or 3 decibel bump in the mid bass. But if you underpower this headphone, that disappears. This headphone sounds flat, lacks impact, and lacks weight to the bass. So you have to properly amp this headphone. And I'll tell you right now, I would say probably 3 watts per channel into 32 ohms is the minimum amp power that I'd recommend for this headphone. Okay, comfort, like I said earlier, the weight isn't an issue to me. It's a little heavier than average. I do prefer the round ear cups. And it's got almost no clamping force at all. It doesn't squeeze my head at all. The ear cups rotate to exactly where I want them to be. And I can lean forward without worrying about it falling off. But like I said, I can wear this headphone for hours. And that happens a lot because when I listen to something, I want to get out another CD and listen to that. I want to just keep listening. I want to listen to, I've got like 500 CDs. There's times that I just want to keep trying CD after CD to find out how good it's going to sound on this headphone. And to be honest, I'm never disappointed. Okay, I got into it a little bit a second ago as far as amp requirements. This headphone needs, number one, a very clean, undistorted amp, and it needs substantial power. And once again, I don't recommend less than probably 3 watts per channel. And to really take this headphone to where it's capable of, the amps that I've used have all been at least 4 or 5 watts per channel, and the best amps that I've heard with this headphone have been up in the range of 8, 9, 10 watts per channel into 32 ohms. The more power your amp has on reserve, the more it's going to control the bass and keep that bass tight and solid and give it slam. And when you're underpowered, if you try running this on an amp with maybe 1 watt per channel or even less, like I said, you're going to have no impact and no weight to the bass. DAC requirements. This headphone needs a very clean, detailed DAC, and you don't have to spend a huge amount of money for that, but you also want a DAC that has a very good sound stage and a DAC that has very good separation between the instruments. Your sound stage, your separation, your imaging is all going to depend on your DAC. So you're going to want to use a quality DAC with this. And like I said, you could get started. If you buy this headphone and you've used up most of your budget, you can get started with probably a $400 to $500 amp DAC combination and have some pretty good sound, but that is not going to take this all the way to its limit. So now I told you, no, actually I wanted to compare this to a couple of headphones first. Okay, the closest I've heard to this is Hifiman's HE1000 SE. That was a $3,500 headphone till about 6 months ago. It's now $1,695, which is less than a third the price of this headphone. Is it as good? It's close, but no. This headphone is a little bit better in every way than the 1000 SE, in my opinion. Other than soundstage height, the SE 1000 does have a little more soundstage height, and the SE 1000 is much, much easier to drive. You don't need to spend near as much money on an amp DAC combination to take that one to its best. How much better is this? To be honest, when I first got this headphone, when I first put it on, I wasn't blown away by it. I was expecting it to be significantly different or significantly better than the HE1000 SE, and to be honest, I didn't initially hear a large difference. But what I came to realize over time is it's a little bit better in every way. It's a little bit more detailed, a little bit cleaner, a little bit more focused, a little bit sharper, a little bit more precise imaging, a little bit more better separation of the instruments. This is just a little bit better in every way than the HE1000 SE. The HE1000 Stealth is, if you're looking for more bass, it's actually a better choice. The 1000 Stealth, actually has a little bit more of a V-shaped tone balance where it has a little more emphasis on the bass. So if you're looking for a little more bass but almost as much detail, the 1000 Stealth may be a better choice for you. If you're looking for even more bass, the Aria Organic it's not going to give you the detail level of this, but it does have more bass. It's a little bit warmer in the mid-range, very pleasant, and any of those three, the 1000 SE, the 1000 Stealth, the Aria Organic, are all much, much easier to drive and not near as dependent on the equipment. If you spent, say, $1,000 on your amp and DAC combination, you're probably going to get just as good a sound out of the 1000 SE or the 1000 Stealth or even the Aria Organic as you are on this. To really take this up to that next level that it's capable of, you pretty much are going to have to spend as much on your amp DAC combination as you did on this headphone. And I've heard of people going even much further, spending $20,000, $30,000 on an amp DAC combination for this headphone to take it all the way to its limits. So, like I said, any of those three headphones will bring you close, but not all the way to this one. But any of those will do fine on a $1,000 amp DAC combination, where this, to really appreciate it, you're going to have to take it further. Okay, so I made a list of 18 amps, and I'm going to tell you how I thought that they did with this headphone. Did they properly power it? Did they give it what it needs? And I'm going to start with the one I already mentioned as being my favorite, and that's the Hifiman Golden Wave Prelude, which sells for about $2,500, and that is an amp only without a DAC. That is the best sounding amp that I've heard with this headphone. It is extremely clean and detailed, very, very smooth, and that amp takes total control of this headphone and makes the bass not only solid and give the bass weight, but it makes it very tight and well controlled. And like I said, I'll list the rest of the amps, but of all the amps I've used, that one, in my opinion, did the best job driving this. Okay, another amp that did a very good job, I have the Audio GD Master 9 and Audio GD R8 MK2 DAC as a stack. You can see them right here, and that is about a $4,000 stack, and it does a very good job. It's not quite on the level of detail as the Prelude combined with the iFi IDSD Signature Pro model DAC. It doesn't have quite that level of detail, but it does a very good job. I could, live the rest of my life listening to this Susvara with the Audio GD stack. Okay, the Burson Conductor 3 reference, which not sure exactly why, but my camera shut off. Apparently it was too hot. It's a GoPro 12, and I'm using the media mod, which kind of surrounds it. And I think that may hold the heat in when there's no air movement, which is kind of the case in here right now. So anyway, this is only the second time that's happened, and I just started talking about the Burson Conductor 3 reference, and it does a very good job of driving the Susvara. I believe that sells for about $1,750. It has a very good DAC, nice clean sound, and about 8 watts per channel into 32 ohms, and drives the Susvara very well. Next, I'm going to Talk about the topping D70 Pro and A70 Pro Saber stack. And I believe that's about a $1,300 stack when you put the two together. And it actually does a very good job of driving the Susvara. Power is not an issue at all. I believe that amp puts out something like 16 watts per channel. I think that's into 16 ohms. So you're probably looking about 8 watts per channel into 32 ohms. Power-wise, does a very good job. Extremely clean, detailed deck and amp. The detail with the Susvara is exceptional. The only issue I have is just a little bit slightly on the cool, dry side, which the Susvara kind of likes a warmer, richer, an amp and DAC that leans a little bit towards the warm and rich. So very clean, detailed sound out of the topping stack, but a little less musicality than some of the other options. Next is the Hifiman EF600, which you can see sitting right here. Has a lot of power, does a pretty good job of driving it, a very good DAC, no complaints at all. I think that sells for about $6.99, so that's not going to take the Susvara to its limits, but does a good job. The less expensive EF400, which sells for $3.99, I believe it'd probably be about the bottom end of where I would start with an amp DAC combination for this headphone. At $3.99, it actually does a pretty good job, has enough power. The DAC isn't quite as smooth as the one on the EF400, but it has a little more bite to it. A little bit of grain that you can hear with this headphone, but punchy and snappy, and it's actually a pretty good choice. And at $3.99, like I said, that probably the lowest price I would start with this headphone to really get a pretty good taste of what it's capable of. The Felix Audio Elise, which is a $2,000 OTL Type 2 amp, not an amp I would recommend for this headphone. It gives it a beautiful mid-range, absolutely incredible vocals, and just such a holographic sound in the mid-range, but it lacks enough current to give this headphone solid, tight bass with impact. So probably OTL amps are usually not a good choice. The Felix Audio Echo does a little bit better. It's also an OTL, and it just seems to be better with planar magnetic headphones than the Elise, but still not capable of enough current to really give this headphone solid bass. It's gonna be a little bit lacking in bass with that amp, but once again, gorgeous mid-range of vocals. The Wells Audio V8, which is also an OTL tube amp, and it's sitting there right behind me. This one is the big surprise. This is the only OTL Type 2 amp that I've tried that does an excellent job of driving the Susvara. I'm not sure what kind of power output it's capable of, and I was told before I got it that it did a good job. Did not believe it. Tried it. It actually does an excellent job of driving the Susvara. Not quite the bass impact of something like the Prelude, but absolutely beautiful sound. Just a nice, gives it Susvara a little bit of warmth, but incredible detail. And I love listening to the Susvara with the Wells Audio V8. I believe that sells for about $1,500. And the DAC I was using with that was the topping D70S MQA, which is an older discontinued DAC that actually had a warmer sound than most of the other topping DACs, but an equal amount of detail. I also used this with the Hi-Fi Man Serenade amp DAC as a DAC, standalone DAC running into this, which actually also did a very good job. The Waveborn Preamp Plus and Power Amp Plus. The Power Amp Plus is sitting right here. The Preamp Plus, if you can see it, is sitting up here. The Preamp Plus is an OTL Type 2 amp and not an amp I would recommend for this. Once again, beautiful mid-range, but not enough current to produce solid type bass. This, on the other hand, the Waveborn Power Amp Plus, which is a transformer coupled amp that I think is rated at a very conservative 3 watts per channel, actually does an excellent job of driving the Susvara and gives it a very similar sound to the Wells Audio. These two both do a great job with the Susvara. The Topping E50L50 stack, which is about a $500 stack. I don't have it right now, but I had it a while back when I first got the Susvara in. Actually does a very respectable job. I can't remember if that amp is capable of, I think, about 3 watts per channel. And it's a very clean DAC and amp with decent power, and for a $500 stack, it actually did a very respectable job with this. And I actually preferred it over the EF400. It was a cleaner, more detailed sound. The Hi-Fi Audio IDSD Neo 2, which is sitting up here. That is a huge improvement over the original Neo. I think the original Neo put out 1 watt per channel. This one puts out 5 watts per channel. Does a very good job of driving the Susvara. And it also has a bass boost and the spatial whatever button for a more 3-dimensional sound. And I've actually done quite a bit of listening to the Susvara with this. Once again, the DSD Neo 2 from Hi-Fi Audio sells for about $8.99 for the amp DAC combo and does a very decent job. Won't take the Susvara to its limits, but does a very good job. The FIO K7, which I just got in not too long ago, it's a $199 amp DAC that puts out a clean 2 watts per channel into 32 ohms. Actually does a respectable job of driving this. It's got nice clean sound. And once again, not going to take the Susvara to its limits, but does a respectable job for $199. So if you just spent all your money on your headphone and you've got only $200 left, the FIO K7 will get you started. The Hi-Fi Zendeck. Decent sound, but not enough power. You're up at pretty much the power limit. The bass sounds flat and lacks punch. Wouldn't advise it for this headphone. The Hi-Fi Audio IDSD Pro Signature, which is the $3,250 DAC that I mentioned earlier, that is my favorite DAC with this headphone. It also has a built-in headphone amp that I can't remember what the power rating of that was, but it's not real high. I think it's maybe 2 watts per channel, maybe less. Actually, the DAC part of it is outstanding. The amp actually did a pretty decent job, a respectable job with this. Excellent job with the easier to drive Hi-Fi Man headphones like the 1000s or the Arias, but actually did a decent job with this. But it's a lot better using that as a standalone DAC and then using a more powerful amp with it. And then last of all, the Emotiva A100 Bass X amp, which I don't know if you can see it. It's sitting right here. Okay, that is discontinued. They have a newer version out that's a little bit different that I think is $299 or something like that. This was like $229 at the time I bought it. It is a 50 watt per channel into 8 ohm speaker amp that by inserting a couple of jumpers will put that entire power to the headphone jack, which works out to about 12.5 watts per channel into 32 ohms. That thing will drive the Susvara. As far as power, it will drive it, it will control it, it will give you bass, it will give you impact. It's not an expensive amp, and it's a little bit, you're going to hear a little bit of the graininess of it with the Susvara. And I haven't tried the newer version of that. I can't even remember what it's called, and I think that's $299 or $350. But power wise, plenty of clean power for the Susvara, but just like I said, a little bit of grain because it's a budget amp, but it does do the job. So I mean, I could be pretty happy for a while with an amp like that and a little deck, like, a little $150, $200 deck from someone like Topping, because that is an amp only. So anyway, that's my list of amps and how I think they do. So bottom line, what do I think of this headphone? This is without a doubt, from a technical point of view, the best headphone that I've ever heard. It really has no flaws. It really has no weaknesses. The only issues I have with it at all is it does require a lot of power, and it does require a very high quality DAC and an amp that's capable of very clean power. You've got to spend some money on your equipment, or you're kind of wasting your money. You'd be better off with one of the lower priced Hifiman headphones that aren't near as demanding of the equipment. This is a $6,000 headphone. That's a huge amount of money and way out of the budget of most people. The only reason I have it is because it was loaned to me for review. I could not go out and spend $6,000 on a headphone. So fortunately, I had the pleasure of reviewing this headphone, and it's a lot of money. And I'll be honest, there's other headphones out there that are almost as good for a lot less money. Starting with like the Hifiman HE1000 SE, the 1000 Stealth. Those are less than a third the price of this. In fact, the Stealth is less than a fourth the price of this. No, it's not as good, but it will take you close for a whole lot less money, and you don't need to spend near as much on your amp and DAC. There's other companies with very good headphones that are high-end headphones that are gonna give you, probably just as much enjoyment, but not quite the level of detail. But you know what? You're not gonna miss it unless you compare the two directly. I'm talking about headphones like the ZMF Atrium, which is one of my favorite headphones. Not on the level of detail of this, but to me, on the same level of enjoyment. The Kennerton Thror, the Kennerton Odin. The Thror, I think, is going for about $3,400. The Odin for about $2,200. Both excellent headphones that will give you years of enjoyment. Once again, not quite the detail level, but you're not going to miss it if you don't compare them directly. What else? The Merzitish Phobos. That was another headphone that I really liked. That's, I think, sells for $2,200, something like that. Huge soundstage, not quite the level of detail, but an excellent headphone. And then one you can pick up for, I think, $1,000 still, the little JM Audio XTC2. And no, it's not quite on the same level, but will get you close and a lot more bass. If you're a bass head, excellent headphone. It has really solid, tight controlled bass with a lot of weight to it. But there's a lot of choices, but if you want the very best, if money is not an issue to you, if you want the best headphone sound that you can get, this is it. I mean, like I said, from a technical point of view, this is the best headphone I've reviewed. I'm not saying there's not something better out there. I haven't reviewed some of the other, pinnacle level high-end headphones. I haven't heard any of the Abyss headphones. I haven't heard, there's other headphones that are up there in price, like Stax headphones, stuff like that, that I haven't heard. So I can't say that this is the best headphone in the world, but this is technically the best headphone I've personally heard. But once again, this headphone is $2,000 more expensive than any headphone I've reviewed. So, it's up to you. My personal opinion is if you can afford it, you want the best, and you plan on, if you're able to spend an equal or more on your DAC and amp, go for it. You will not be disappointed unless you're a bass head. This headphone is not for bass heads. But if you want to spend less than a third the price on the headphone and only have to spend maybe $1,000 on an amp DAC, go for the HE1000, or if you want a little more bass, the 1000 Stealth, or the Aria Organic. You're going to get really good sound for a whole lot less money. Don't go in debt up to your eyeballs to buy this headphone. If $6,000 and another $6,000 or more for equipment is not a financial burden to you, this is the headphone for you. But don't put a second mortgage on your house. Don't go in debt up to your eyeballs to buy this headphone. There are less expensive alternatives that will bring you close. So basically, the very bottom line, best headphone I've ever heard. It's expensive. I would, this is for those people that money is not an object to reach that last 10% of performance. They say that, that you've got to double the price to get 10% more performance. That's what you're looking at, the point of diminishing returns. You have to double the price or triple the price to get that last 10%. If you are capable of doing that, this will give you that last 10% and take you where you want to go. And but think about it this way. If you compare this to a home system, I'm talking speakers, amp, all that, you would probably have to spend 10 times the amount of what you would spend on this headphone and an amp and DAC on a speaker system. So now you're looking at maybe $120,000 for a speaker system that's going to give you the kind of detail and clarity and instrument separation that this headphone gives you. And then you're going to need an acoustically perfect listening room that's going to be many thousands more. So if you look at it from that angle of view, this is actually a fantastic bargain. You can hear the absolute pinnacle of high-end sound for maybe $12,000 total, counting your headphone, amp, and DAC. And in that respect, it is a bargain. So if that's something you're capable of doing without going in debt up to your eyeballs, I highly recommend this headphone. And I'm going to wrap it up with that. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't joined the Headphone Experience on Facebook, we're up to 33.7 or maybe 8,000 members. So I'd like to see you all over there. Once again, thanks for watching my video.